This video is sponsored by Leopoly. But damn, isn't this freaking cool? Like, I was just sculpting this in VR and now it's already here decimated with two different materials, UVs and all the textures generated just like that, to quickly check it out and then we can keep sculpting. This is so cool. Hi guys, my name is Borodante, and today let's check out the new version of ShapeLab, the cool VR sculpting app we tried last year. And while we're at it, we may as well make the first big environment asset for my future horror game. Everything is gonna be put to work. This is my quick general shape of a big important tree that will be a big puzzle in the demo level I'm working on right now. What I wanted to do today is I wanted to show you guys how you can use ShapeLab with its new cool features, bring in any model like this quick dummy tree I put together in Unreal Engine here, and then go ahead and sculpt it as much as you want, apply any kind of textures, roughness, metalness, emissive colors, and then with one click of a button you can export it and at the same time decimate it, create UV maps, and bake all the vertex colors and roughness and everything into textures, and bring it to Unreal Engine or Blender or anything else within just one file, quickly and easily, and you can go ahead and just replace one asset with another, just like that. This right here is just a quick test I did. By the way, there's two links in the video description to get ShapeLab on Steam or on ShapeLab's website, and right now it's a great time to get it because there's 30% discount. So this is a new model that was sculpted with much higher definition, but then it was decimated, and it has normal maps applied to it. Of course, this is a very quick drafty example, and today we're gonna be working on the actual model of this tree that will look much better than this. As far as my testing showed, UVs don't necessarily unwrap perfectly when you just click a button and that's it. So we'll see about that, but at the very least, as a mock-up, it definitely works really well, and if anything, you can export the high-definition model to Blender and bake everything the way you want with the UVs you want. But ShapeLab now provides you with the ability to quickly just click one button and get things running with like drafty preview of all the textures and everything directly from the sculpting app. So let's check it out. So I'll go ahead and start over by exporting this asset. Of course, you can start from scratch in ShapeLab, but I want to actually do it this way so it would be more applied. So yeah, ShapeLab is developing a lot these days, and as one of the steps, ShapeLab now has its own like a launcher, and you also create an account to actually launch it now. Quick note, you don't actually have to create an account. You can go ahead and skip this step and just start ShapeLab, but there are some benefits in better communication with ShapeLab support and stuff like that if you do sign up. So there's that. As far as I understand, by the time this video is out, this beta version will actually be released for you guys. So yeah, you can check all of this out right now. All right, I'm in. Here we are. This is the new ShapeLab and its default document with the sphere. And there's plenty of cool things I want to show you here. So first of all, let's, I don't think I can, oh, I can delete the last model. That's cool. Let's go ahead and import the model from my folder. Now in here, I'm not sure, I think we should keep the default translation. This is one of the things where I need to make sure that the tree stays with the same origin at the same rotation and everything. So this is one of the steps I need to make sure I do to keep things in place. Of course, in this case, it will be almost the same, except for the fact that our tree is pretty big. So that all we have to do is just zoom out like this. So this is it. This is my work from Unreal Engine. Now, first thing I want to do, I know if I'll start sculpting right now, we'll see like these bugs right here, like holes or cracks in between the old big polygons. That's either like the way the format JLB works, or maybe the way Unreal Engine sculpts, you know, it puts the shape together and doesn't really stitch things together. But what we can do is just quickly voxel remesh with smoothing here. So we just hit apply and we have this kind of look. this is something to start working with. So yeah, the best part about ShapeLab is still here. Really well done dynamic remeshing with the brushes, which is like such an amazing thing. I'm still impressed by it. And what's even more awesome is that in ShapeLab, just to quickly recap, we can not just paint an object with a certain color, but also change its roughness, like we're actually painting the PBR material. Roughness, metalness, color, and emission as well. And we can use alphas, and these are the few I imported back then. We have like presets of materials, and we can add new ones. So here's the one I just created. So everything's pretty well set up in here, like easy to use. This is a new thing, you can save your materials. You can now use like a spray mode, so my brush shape will be spraying around. And now you guys can see I'm painting this metallic red color onto the surface. And the most amazing part that's happening right now is in the wireframe. So that's, again, to those of you guys who haven't seen the first video on ShapeLab that I did, look at this. It's when it's getting to the flat color, it's optimizing it and removing extra polygons again. This is such a cool thing. I'm still so impressed by this. And yeah, now we have this ability to like spray with our brush stroke or use a stamp mode, which is like the ability to place one stamp somewhere where we need it. So a nice thing for careful placement of certain textures. It's pretty awesome for the first, introduction version of this feature. Really cool. Definitely a welcome feature. So yeah, as I said, all of this is actual vertex painting, so we end up having these vertices that bring this color and material with them like this. And when we get to export, the whole thing will be decimated and projected to textures up to 8K resolution, so it's pretty cool. Now let's actually start sculpting. I haven't told you guys what the sculpt is about, so this is going to be this big massive tree, more like closer to the end of the map of the demo level. And in the tree trunk right here, there will be a pretty big hole, not as big as the height of John, but pretty big. We're gonna shrink it down a little bit. And inside of it, there will be like a body part. I don't necessarily want it to be super obvious what body part it is, but it may look like an armpit. That's all I'm gonna say, and I think it's beautiful enough as it is. Oh yeah, another cool new feature is that you save brush settings with the project, which is so cool. Because really, a huge part of the project you're working on is not just the model you're working on, but also the tools you're working with. So if you have the default brush with a certain alpha and everything set up, you can just go ahead and keep working with everything as if you are just continuing. What I really like about the smoothing in ShapeLab is that it's also dynamically changing the topology as it's smoothing, which is really cool. So let's quickly add another object, like a sphere, and I'll put it right here. This will be that fleshy part, so that'll be the base, just like that. Something going on in there. So, another really cool feature that I'm super excited about. Most brushes now have this mode called Snap to Surface, which is somewhat similar to Raycast, but very different. If Raycast was like this, so without anything, you have like a 3D sphere, and as you move it around, you're like applying the effect to the model on the intersection of the sphere and the model. That's how sculpting in VR works. There's the only way it can work. Everything is three-dimensional. Raycast lets you like shoot with that sphere always onto the surface, but that's like a one way to do it, to stick to the surface, because you really want to stick to the surface a lot of the times to keep working with like the surface sculpting, the traditional ZBrush style sculpting. But this is a bit uncomfortable because you need to like twist your hand, and generally it's like projecting. It's a bit, all over the place. You may be shooting here and then suddenly there. Like, it's comfortable if you want to do something, you know, big and not having to move around a lot. But generally, it really felt like it could do better, and this snap to surface is exactly that. So we're back to just the sphere in your hand in a way, but now as I move it closer, it just sticks to the surface and just like stays there. So this feels so much more like using a pen tablet that just projects straight to the surface, but a little bit different because I can project from the side or anywhere I want, even from the back where I don't see anything. What's the benefit of this is that, contrary to this mode where like nothing is snapping, it's a bit hard to draw a very precise straight line if I'll turn off all the wireframe. Like as I move it around, sometimes my sphere would go under the surface or over the surface, and it's like uneven because of that. And a lot of the times you want to create, you know, a nice consistent line, and this thing just lets you do exactly that. Nice and consistent, as if it was, you know, painted with that. Being able to really lean on the surface of the sculpt, that's such a cool thing. That's like a low-key the biggest improvement that's changing a lot about every single action you do during the sculpting. This is a huge deal, I love it. Oh wow, that is so cool. Oh, autosave. Yeah, there's now autosaving. I don't remember that being the case. So you can introduce this kind of shapes if you want. That's quite a flexibility here. You can like stretch it into this kind of shape. So pretty much like if I make it round, it will be kind of a capsule shape, like some kind of giant fly laid its eggs. Anyway, I don't really need that at the moment. Let's just go ahead and sculpt our tree. It needs to be a very special one. It needs to have very like deep crevices and ridges on its bark, maybe even looking like it's some kind of old scar with an open wound or something like that. And there will of course be some kind of fleshy, gooey material on the edges of the hole here, so everything will be looking quite special. And one thing I learned about VR sculpting after a while of practicing is that you gotta make sure you just sit down and relax. You know, you can really bring it very close to normal desktop sculpting with a lot of like VR benefits in terms of like just lay the hand here and put the model in front of you at a convenient size and distance, kind of like this, like it's on the table in front of me, and stop just rotating all the time. Just work at this angle, you know, so you could rest your second hand on the table here and just go ahead and sculpt away. And I think this is a big deal because it's all about being able to work for a while. And the thing about VR is always, one way or another, it's kind of an exercise. Because even if you're not standing up and walking around, you're still holding your arms in the air all the time. That's a lot of a workout that you don't notice at first, but hours into the sculpting, you know, it's quite a work. So there's clay brush right here, and let's use that surface snapping. So in this design, I gotta make sure that there is a way for John to come close to the hole, because we'll need to interact with this flash in the game. So this is kind of a path in here, and I shouldn't go too crazy with it. It should be sort of flat, like half of this whole slab at the bottom, it will be underground, like this is just the base. So yeah, it needs to be like a cool, interesting shape, not just some round hole, something fun like this. And yeah, what I love about VR grab tool, like the one where you can just move things around, you can also like twist them and all, and go in all 3 dimensions at all times. Let's actually make a through hole in here with this guy. Boom. So yeah, that's a little bit about the hole shape, but actually let's work a bit more on the actual tree branches and everything, because they're not final, that's for sure. So let's remove some of that stuff. Yeah, what's cool about the snake hook with dynamic topology is that you can do whatever you want and also like carve into the shape as well, like this. So I wonder how long I want the shape to be. It should be kind of very special and seen from a little bit of a, like, from afar. But also I'm thinking to make it like hollowed out, like it's a dead tree at the top. So it will look kind of like, why the hell is that flashy thing showing up in here when there's like nothing to it, to the tree, like it's not really going anywhere. So I want to make sure things are a bit more three-dimensional, like shouldn't be sticking out just flat like that. A bit more in-depth like this. And yeah, again, the greatest benefit of VR, you can go in all 3 dimensions as you're making one brushstroke, and that's pretty dope, especially when you're making a tree. Generally, I can see, and there was like notes in the updates that there was a lot of improvement in the way brushes work in general, and you can feel it, like they do work in a more sophisticated way. Oh my. It's kind of cool, like, it feels kind of like a tree, but at the same time, it's kind of like a biomass growth. And it's almost like all of this is arms and it's gonna get you. No, this is so cool. So I made this extra branch right here, and now I'm looking at the silhouette and it's like weirdly positioned. So I made a big grab tool brush here and just selecting and rotating. So cool. Like, this is low-key completely different from the way you can work with a mouse. Because with a mouse, you can't do this in place. Not to mention this, you know, but like so many extra things you can do with just one brushstroke. It's really cool. Thing is, we can really go crazy with it because Unreal Engine 5 and Nanite, we can go with as many details as we want. Connected, right? So I can, oh yeah, like it's actually showing that I'm only selecting one branch or the other branch. Cool. Connected is very helpful here. Generally, all the features of brushes in VR, they feel like superpowers because all of this feels more real, you know? Now let's add some details to this flesh here. The armpit may look somewhat like that in there. It should be like questionable. You shouldn't, like, it's almost a part of the puzzle to figure out if it's an armpit or what, but generally it will be positioned in there somehow like this. What I want to do right now is I want to export it back to Unreal in this state and see how it works in the level. So let's check it out. Let's actually cover it with a color or with a material. Well, yeah, I was thinking something like this, but you can never tell, like, what the color of the tree trunk should actually be. Tree bark. Now, what I do is I'll click Export. We'll use textures, embed them in the 3D file, which is GLB file. Let's use 4K. You know what? For the testing, I never tried. Let's try 8K textures. Target face count. So overall, we have right now 500,000 polygons. Let's shrink it down to, I don't know, 75,000. Let's see how it goes. I never tried multiple objects, so it's decimating everything. Then it'll create UVs like this. Exporting mesh and texture. Okay, that's it. It was about a minute or something. Whew. So first of all, I assume most people probably use Blender more than they use Unreal Engine. So let's give it a try with importing GLB into Blender. I won't touch anything, let's just import. And here's our tree with the armpit. And this is how it got decimated. Still pretty dense, of course. And if I hit cycles here, we're getting everything, including normal maps. Of course, we have very fuzzy details for now, but you can see how the whole thing is working. This is right here, this branch didn't unwrap well, so it's gonna look weird. Here's our tree right here. Let's see. So right now I'll replace with the selection asset, and it's right there in the same place. So that's really cool. Working on an asset this way is much more fun. Oh, the armpit is a separate object. There it is. Could I kind of weld objects together when I was importing? Oh, there it is. When I'm importing, we can combine static meshes. There it is. Even in the preview, it's showing the armpit already. That's kind of cool. Awesome. Yeah, the origin is in the same place. Oh, that's shiny. And yeah, everything is always looking more shiny when you import it in Unreal. Honestly, I think it feels more shiny than it was in ShapeLab still. Yeah, and the body is still as shiny, so it is, like, consistently like that. Generally, of course, it's normal that materials look a bit differently in different renders, but ShapeLab team told me it is something on their list to improve, and I think we can expect this to happen since it is really just a certain gamma curve fix that needs to be applied. So, metallic and roughness and emission are actually the same texture object, so you can see it's the same in here. It's just using blue channel for metallic and green for roughness. And as you guys can see, it's all already set up as a material in Unreal Engine when I just import the asset, and in Blender as well. So all the materials are set up for you. In here, it's even using like separate color node for that. It's so cool. So one thing I would do is in roughness here, I would add, I don't know, like a curve. Like it most likely should be a curve. And yeah, doing something like this. So yeah, now it feels nice and matte on both the tree, and the armpit is a little bit more shiny, just the way we want it. Overall, of course, is just fine in terms of we can define the relative shininess of things just fine while sculpting and painting everything, and then just apply one consistent fix of just this gamut curve. In here we have this brightness curves in Unreal Engine, so I'll make it, should it be higher or lower? I don't know. And for the armpit, there you go, that's looking pretty good. So let's go and check it out. Okay, nicely can walk on top of it, but do I want to go from such a side? I mean, maybe, but I feel like it should like start from here, like curve into this place, this little path. So I'll probably do that somehow. And this is how we can stand next to the armpit part. And there will be cutscenes going on in here and everything. Pretty good. Feels just right. Feels very giant, like this armpit is massive. When you put human-sized model next to this, you start understanding what's going on. I feel like I want it wider, like the branches should go more on the sides, because right now it's like really tall, and from the distance it's, well, pretty cool, but overall it's kind of like this, and I wanted to have a bit more of a... But damn, isn't this freaking cool? Like, I was just sculpting this in VR, and now it's already here decimated with 2 different materials, UVs and all the textures generated just like that, to quickly check it out, and then we can keep sculpting. This is so cool. Here's a light. Oh my god, that's loud. Anyway, after this I spent about 2 days sculpting the tree, and the best part was going back and forth between Unreal Engine and ShapeLab, quickly exporting the model and seeing what my progress looks like in the game. Also, what was great was that I found myself using a whole lot of different brushes all the time. Different brushes, different alpha textures, different modes of jittering that really amplified my productivity in terms of working on the surface of the tree bark. So all of that was a lot of fun, and I felt like I was in the flow. So after that day was finished, I spent another whole day really changing the look of the bark a lot, and here's what I had to say the next day. What I did was I played around with a pretty rough and big brush that I used to use for creating like shattered glass effect in Photoshop. In here, used as a normal brush without scattering, it was pretty cool to use it for creating very rough texture of the tree bark. Which, I don't know, on one hand, of course, I'm using this very painterly approach for something that should be more or less photorealistic, but I'm not too crazy about that in the first place. It just needs to look cool and, you know, bring the message across and everything. And yeah, I worked a little bit with the transition from the bark to the insides of the tree. Overall, I think we're getting close, since I already applied some of the, like, fleshy, bloody material all over the entrance here. So after that, I decided to look up some tree bark references, mostly to see what the colors should be on the bark. Then I went back to ShapeLab and finished the work with the deep crevices of the bark, as well as worked a lot on the materials, toning things down on the bloody surrounding of the hole, as well as adding separate new object made of a bunch of small little spheres that I applied a lot of just rough texturing on, and that ended up being some kind of like a moss looking thing, adding that extra edge to the shape of the moss. Since I was adding green spots all over the place, I wanted to add something that's an actual separate object, so it would stick out a bit more. So yeah, after going through all of that, I felt like I was pretty much done with the model the way I can make it in ShapeLab, so I decided to check out the final result in Unreal Engine for the last time. Let's apply. Okay, that's a very bloody armpit. Oh yeah, there's a lot more definite. This was very like fuzzy and shiny. This one's a lot more detailed, like I added a lot more sharp details all over the place. Lumps are looking okay, much closer to the way they looked before I applied any details to them in terms of their shapes. But then there's normal maps that look pretty good. So yeah, overall everything's dark and also the shininess is too strong. So we can go ahead and apply that fix I did before, and also for the color of the tree trunk and the moss. And yeah, roughness is very nice. Maybe a bit too strong, right? A little bit shinier. All right, looking pretty cool. The texture work is of course pretty basic. I feel like it can really support the geometry way better, but for that I could really use like cavity masking. I would make more of a like brighter colors in the cavities and maybe darker on the surface, or vice versa, something like that. I feel like for a tree it would look pretty good. All right, this shot is looking pretty awesome right now. Oh yeah, that detail is showing up pretty well, much more defined this time. Dope! We've got ourselves some massive freaking tree. Good stuff. It's giant. It's almost like a building size. Oh my god, this guy is here. Go away. Building-sized model that is completely covered with insane amount of polygons on every single bit of it. That's nuts. Get off my property. So yeah, this is it. We've got ourselves a very decent, like, I don't know, 75% made model of this tree. Mostly I can see that I would be adding particle system, something separate, like a particle system for maybe some kind of bushes, some kind of particle-based moss on the surface of this tree, so something that has nothing to do with sculpting, as well as a much more advanced texturing work that I'll do in Substance Painter. And I think with this high detail model, it will be quite fun to texturize. But yeah, again, the most amazing part is how you just click a button and in like 5 minutes you have the model fully like UV unwrapped and everything in like this drafty way for you to preview your result just like that. It's so cool. Funny how it's just so useful for me here in Unreal Engine for previewing and everything. It's just perfect. So yeah, this is it. Tell me guys what you think. Again, there's a link in the video description where you can find ShapeLab on Steam. And for me, this is it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye! I wonder what this will look like in an actual forest later into the development, but I think it's gonna be pretty good. My god, the surface of the pathway, so intense.